Hi everybody, it's Brendan joining you again, and today I wanted to take some time to share a quick gospel passage with you all and offer my thoughts and reflections on that passage. I'm hoping that this can be the start of a new video series where we together as a community go through different scripture passages and share our thoughts and reflections. So I don't want this to be a one-way street. At the end of this video, I'm going to invite everybody watching to click a link in the description of this video. That will bring you to a Google form where you can share your thoughts with me and with the St. John's community. And in our next video, I'm hoping I'm able to share the thoughts of everybody watching this on the passage that we go through, in addition to sharing a new passage with you all next week. I hope that this series encourages us to engage with Scripture together, think critically about our faith, and share our thoughts with our fellow brothers and sisters here at St. John's. To pick today's gospel passage, I actually turned to our Book of Common Prayer, which is such a wonderful resource for so many reasons. In the back of the Book of Common Prayer, you'll find what's called the Daily Office Lectionary, which is basically just a list of various readings assigned to the different weeks and the different days throughout the liturgical year. So it breaks the liturgical year up into various weeks depending on which Sunday it's closest to, and then assigns different readings for the different days of the week. Every single day there's a number of Psalms that are provided, in addition to an Old Testament reading, a New Testament reading not from the Gospels, and finally a Gospel reading, of course. And it's such a wonderful devotion for people looking to incorporate a little bit more Scripture into their lives. So today's reading comes from the Gospel according to Matthew, and it's a really special reading for a lot of reasons that we'll get into once I offer my reflection. But to summarize, it's one of the few stories that appears in all four Gospels, and in three of the Gospels, it appears at exactly the same time in the narrative. So it's clearly a really important story, a really central story, and a real turning point in the Gospel story, in the Gospel message. So I'm hoping that you all enjoy this story as much as I do. This is personally one of my favorite passages in all of the Gospels, and I'm really excited to be able to share it with all of you. So this is a reading from the Gospel according to Matthew. While Jesus was in Bethany, in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. "Why this waste?" they asked. "This perfume could have been sold at a high price, and the money given to the poor." Aware of this, Jesus said to them, "Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor will always have you, but you will not always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she has prepared me for burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will be told in memory of her." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Christ. So this passage, as I said, is one of my favorite gospel passages for a number of reasons. For one, as I said, it's one of the few stories that appears in all four Gospels. And in three of the Gospels, in Matthew, Mark, and in John, it appears at exactly the same place in the narrative, right before Judas's betrayal of Jesus, and of course the Passion narrative that follows that. So clearly it's a very important story, right? But just reading it, it may not seem particularly amazing. So we kind of have to think a little bit harder about what's going on here. So what's the basic action of this story? Jesus and his disciples are gathered in the home of Simon the leper, and a woman approaches Jesus with a jar of very expensive perfume, as Matthew's gospel tells us here, very expensive perfume. And she pours this perfume on Jesus's head. And when the disciples, when they see this, they totally freak out, saying, "Why are you wasting this expensive perfume? We could have sold it. We could have given that money to the poor." And Jesus rebukes them and says, "Why are you troubling this woman? She's done a good thing for me. In fact, she has prepared me for burial." And indeed, soon after this passage, we go into the Garden of Gethsemane where Jesus is betrayed by Judas, handed over to the Sanhedrin, and the Passion narrative starts. So clearly, this is like a turning point in the Gospels. This happens right before Jesus enters into his Passion narrative, really the darkest point in all four Gospels. And I just love the dialogue that Jesus has with his disciples in this passage. I think the disciples, for a lot of reasons, can actually be a great way for us to help insert ourselves into the Gospel stories. Obviously, we're following along with Jesus throughout the Gospels, but I mean, he's so extraordinary. He's so beyond what we could possibly hope to be in this life, that he can be kind of hard to connect with in a really personal way. I know that's certainly a challenge for me. But the disciples are just ordinary people like you and me. They're very blessed people, of course, to have known Jesus when he lived here on this earth and to have been called to him, but they're just ordinary people. So I think we can really relate to their response here, because they've heard Jesus talk on and on about how important it is to be supporting the poor. He talks about the poor being blessed in the Beatitudes. He talks to the rich young man and tells him to sell all of his possessions and come and follow him. So of course the disciples believe that what this woman is doing is wrong, that she shouldn't be using this oil to anoint Jesus. They should be selling it and giving it to the poor. They're trying to be good disciples, just like we all try to be good disciples. But in all of their fervor and in their anger and then in their trying to search for the right answer of what to do here, they kind of lose sight of the fact that they're not being particularly merciful to this woman. And I think the woman is another character that we can really connect with in this story, because she is just doing what she feels in her heart to be the right thing at that moment. She has this jar of expensive perfume. Perhaps she has saved it for years and years. Perhaps it's one of the few things of value that she owns, and she wants to give it to Jesus. She knows how special Jesus is, and she wants to do something good for him, only to have the disciples rebuke her and tell her that she's done something wrong. And Jesus cuts through here. He, of course, has the right answer. He says, "Leave this woman alone. She's done a good thing for me." And that, I think, is the core message of so much of what the Gospels are trying to get at, that we ought to be living our lives to do something good for Jesus. Are we always going to do everything perfectly? No, of course not. There's only been one person who could ever do everything perfectly, and that was Jesus. This woman's actions, in a lot of ways, remind me of this really beautiful prayer from Thomas Merton, one of my absolute favorite theologians and Christian authors. And he wrote in one of his prayers called the Prayer of the Seeker that I believe, telling this to God, I believe that the desire to please you does, in fact, please you. And that's what this woman is doing, right? She desires to please Jesus. The disciples are desiring to please Jesus. The story of Christianity, the core of our belief, is a relational one. We believe that there has been for a long time a broken relationship between God and man. And Jesus, of course, comes to right that relationship, to tell us how we can repair the relationship between us and God, between us and other human beings, and resolve a broken relationship within ourselves. And the first step in righting that relationship is to live a life to do something good for Jesus. There's a million ways we can do that, of course. One way, as the disciples talk about, is to give to the poor, of course. Jesus talks about in the judgment of the nations that which you do for the least of my brothers, you do for me. So donating our time and money generously to those in need is, of course, a way that we can do something good for Jesus tangibly in this world. But it's not the only way, right? We can spend time with Jesus through prayer and through worship. We can share the grace that Jesus has brought into our lives with other people by being kind and merciful and generous, or by reaching out to our fellow brothers and sisters and helping to share the joy that Jesus has brought us, to share his grace so freely with the world. There's a million ways that we can do something good for Jesus. We ought not limit ourselves. So those are my thoughts on this gospel passage. As you can see, I get really excited talking about it because it is a passage that just means so much to me and I guess speaks to me very personally. But I want to hear your thoughts as well. So please take some time to click the link in the description of this video or in Tidings. That way you can go to the Google form, add your thoughts, and I'm really excited to be able to share those thoughts in our next video. I'm hoping everybody watching this video will take some time to do that. Even if you just have a couple of sentences to say, I totally want to hear them. So please do take some time to do that. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll be talking with you all soon. Hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and God bless.